Welcome back to the deep dive. Every week the world of tech just moves at this incredible speed, but the sources you shared with us for this Retter Reboot, they show us something more than just speed. They show us strategic intent. I mean, these are not small updates. These are the big foundational moves that are shaping what AI is going to look like for the next decade.
That is absolutely right. The volume of everything, the commitments, the acquisitions, the breakthroughs, it's just staggering.
So what's our mission today?
Well, our mission is to be your guides through all this material. We're going to distill the most critical and honestly often surprising things happening in the industry right now.
Giving you that shortcut.
Exactly. A well-informed shortcut to understanding the biggest plays from these huge funding bets and talent grabs all the way to new training methods and some pretty tricky privacy questions.
We've got a lot of ground to cover. I mean, it spans from SoftBank's wallet all the way to Amazon's front door. So let's unpack it. And I think we have to start where the money is.
Always a good place to start.
The global race for scale. And we're talking scale in cash, in talent, and just raw compute power.
And when you look at the sources, it's so clear the competition isn't just about who can code the fastest anymore. It's about who can get the best minds and the best infrastructure.
And that talent grab is, it's front and center.
Yeah.
Meta, for example, just snapped up Manus, which is a pretty high-profile AI startup.
And this wasn't just a random purchase.
No.
It was very targeted. What made Manus so valuable to them was their work on advanced agentic and reasoning-focused technologies. And that's a really key concept for you to grasp if you want to understand what's coming next in AI.
Okay, hold on. Agentic. That's a term we are hearing more and more. Can you break that down for us? What does that actually mean?
Sure. So think of the AI tools we have now as really good answer machines. You ask a question, it gives you an output.
Right.
Agentic AI is different. It's an AI that can plan and then execute a whole series of tasks on its own to reach a goal.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just answer, how do I book a vacation?
It doesn't.
It goes out, it checks the prices, it holds the flights, it manages your calendar, all without you having to guide it step by step. It's moving from being a tool to being a proactive agent, like a digital chief of staff.
That makes perfect sense. And by buying Manus, Meta just gets to absorb that capability immediately. They get to bypass years of their own development.
Exactly. It's all about accelerating their roadmap. It just proves that this whole competition is as much about acquiring talent as it is about anything else.
So if Meta is buying the specialized talent, SoftBank just showed they're willing to bankroll the entire operation. They fully funded their $40 billion commitment to OpenAI.
$40 billion. That single number is just... it's mind-boggling. Analysts are calling it one of the largest single private investments in an AI company ever.
It's a number so big it almost makes you a little skeptical, right? If you're backing one horse with that much money, are you concentrating a huge amount of risk and maybe even narrowing the focus of the whole industry?
And that is the tension at the heart of this. But, if you connect that back to the reality of building these models, that money is, it's fundamentally necessary.
It's not just for salaries.
Oh, not at all. It's for massive global scaling of compute. It's for building out custom infrastructure, for developing models that need thousands of specialized chips all working at once. It essentially buys them the ability to take risks no one else can afford.
So it just eliminates the financial friction. It shows that investors are betting that the current leaders, the ones getting these massive checks, are the ones who will define the next big tech platforms.
Right. The market is betting that concentration is what leads to acceleration.
And all that money translates directly into a need for physical space and hardware, which brings us to xAI.
Right. Elon Musk's venture. They're signaling their ambitions by buying a third building.
Which sounds like a boring real estate deal, but in this context, it's a huge signal.
It's just the tip of the iceberg. That building is being set up to house more server racks, more advanced hardware for bigger and bigger models. We talk about code and data, but you can't forget that building a world-class AI requires these very specialized, very high-density physical locations.
These aren't just office buildings.
No. They're basically complex data centers. They have to be optimized for huge amounts of power, for cooling, for security.
So this move really just highlights that intense scramble for physical space, for compute. It's a good reminder for you that this AI race isn't just some abstract thing happening in the cloud.
Not at all.
It's rooted in the real world of microchips, cooling systems, and very expensive real estate.
That physical infrastructure is the bottleneck.
Yeah.
And xAI is just making sure they get ahead of that problem early.
Okay, so we've covered the money and the buildings. Let's pivot now from the infrastructure to how AI is actually going to interact with us, with you. Because if the race is being won behind the scenes with chips, the next big fight is over the interface.
And we are seeing a really clear shift here. OpenAI is leading the charge by doubling down on audio-based AI. They're pouring money into voice interaction, real-time audio understanding.
But why audio? I mean, we've been using screens for 30 years. Why the big shift now?
It's all part of this bigger industry trend toward what they call ambient, hands-free AI.
Right.
A screen creates friction.
Mm.
You have to stop what you're doing, pull out your phone, type. Audio just lets the AI integrate more naturally into your life. When you're driving, cooking, going for a walk.
So it's about making it accessible, ubiquitous. If AI is going to be a real assistant and not just a fun app, it has to be where you are.
Exactly. In your headphones, in your car, maybe a smart ring. The whole promise is seamless interaction.
Yeah.
And whoever owns that main audio interface,
Yeah.
well, they'll likely own the next generation of personal assistants.
So while that future is being built, IBM has given us a look at how they see enterprise AI maturing over the next couple of years. They published their big trends for 2026.
Right. And this isn't just them gazing into a crystal ball. This is a roadmap. It reflects a move out of that initial, Wild West hype phase and into something more practical, more disciplined.
The idea of one giant model solving every single problem is starting to fade.
It is. Of the 5 trends they listed, I think 2 are really key. The first is that shift toward more trustworthy, efficient, and domain-specific AI systems.
Domain-specific, so smaller and more focused.
Exactly. The industry is realizing that these huge general models are often overkill, and honestly, they can be pretty inaccurate for very specific tasks. So instead of training an AI on the whole internet to read a medical scan,
Right.
companies are asking for smaller models that are purpose-built just for that one thing.
So you go from a search engine to a specialized legal library.
That's a great analogy. These smaller models are cheaper to run, they're easier to fine-tune, and crucially, they're way more reliable inside their little domain.
And what was the other prediction you thought was key?
The deeper integration of AI into existing workflows. So AI stops being a standalone tool and just becomes a native part of how a business operates.
So it's the difference between buying a calculator and just having the calculation function built right into your spreadsheet.
Precisely. It signals that AI isn't just some side project anymore, it's becoming a utility, embedded in CRM and HR and supply chain systems. And that adoption is going to rely on hybrid cloud setups, splitting work between private and public clouds to get the best of both security and cost.
That focus on efficiency, on building smarter, more specialized models, it's a perfect lead-in to our next section. How innovation is pushing forward, even with all these hardware limits and the complicated reality of competition in the chip market.
Yeah, the ability to innovate on training methods is kind of the great equalizer, isn't it? Especially when you can't afford those SoftBank-sized bills or you can't get your hands on the latest chips.
Which is where DeepSeek comes in. They're a Chinese AI startup, and they've introduced this new training method. It's called, and this is a mouthful, manifold constrained scaling.
Right. And this is a perfect example of training smarter, not just harder. I mean, typically, if you want a big competitive model, you need a ton of data and a ton of compute. DeepSeek is basically challenging that entire assumption.
So how does this manifold constrained thing actually work? How does it save money and boost performance?
Okay, in simple terms, think of all your training data as this huge, complex landscape.
Okay.
Not all parts of that landscape are equally useful for training a good model. A lot of it is redundant or irrelevant. DeepSeek's approach, it essentially finds and filters out those useless regions of the data space. So they focus their compute cycles only on the most meaningful, the most high-leverage parts.
So instead of reading every page of a million books to find the key facts, they've built a system that tells them which 10% of the pages have all the important stuff.
That's it. You get better performance with fewer resources. And this could give them a huge strategic advantage, especially under tight hardware and cost constraints. It really highlights that innovation will find a way, If you can't buy more chips, you have to get smarter with the ones you have.
And this whole conversation about hardware efficiency and training, it leads us straight to the company that controls basically the entire hardware pipeline. NVIDIA. And we saw this newly revealed deal between them and Grok. And the details are fascinating because they say so much about market control.
They really do. Analysts are basically suggesting the whole deal is structured to keep up the appearance of competition in the AI chip market,
The appearance of competition, that phrase really jumps out.
while making sure NVIDIA stays in its dominant position.
So why would NVIDIA, the clear market leader, even need to worry about the optics of competition?
A few reasons. I mean, first, there's always the threat of regulatory scrutiny when you're that dominant. Second, customers, even if they love NVIDIA, they want to believe alternatives exist just to keep prices in check.
And Grok is a real alternative, right?
They are.
Yeah.
Grok has this specialized hardware that's incredibly fast at inference, which is the actual running of the models.
So the deal lets Grok keep operating. It provides this visible, independent option, but they're still tied to the giant. What's the tie?
Well, the arrangement makes sure Grok stays economically and, structurally connected to NVIDIA's bigger ecosystem, maybe through software libraries or supply chain deals. So Grok can exist, they can innovate, but they can never really threaten NVIDIA's core control of the market. It's controlled collaboration.
So for you listening, what does this all mean if even the most exciting challengers in hardware are sort of stuck in the orbit of the giants? It makes you wonder where a real disruptive shift is going to come from.
It absolutely raises huge questions about market concentration,
Yeah.
especially when you remember that everyone from OpenAI to xAI depends on this hardware landscape.
Okay, let's shift gears. We're moving from corporate strategy to something much closer to home, consumer privacy. Amazon just added new AI-powered facial recognition to its Ring security products.
That's right. This feature lets Ring users teach the system to recognize familiar faces, family, friends, the regular delivery person, and then it gives you personalized alerts based on who is at the door, not just that someone is at the door.
On the surface, I mean, that's a clear convenience feature. You don't get a notification every single time, only when an unfamiliar face shows up. But the sources we saw immediately pointed to the backlash.
Oh, yes. Critics jumped on this, warning that putting this tech on millions of consumer doorsteps, it just reignites these huge privacy and surveillance concerns. The issue isn't convenience. It's the potential for misuse, for data aggregation, for escalation.
The big tension seems to be between my personal consent and everyone else's. If I turn this on, I'm consenting to having faces recognized on my property. But what about my neighbors? Or just people walking by on the sidewalk?
That is the absolute crux of the debate. When you deploy this kind of powerful recognition tech so widely, it raises these huge questions. Where is the data stored? Who controls the facial models? Could law enforcement get access to it?
We're taking this really controversial technology from controlled public spaces and putting it right on your front door, managed by a private company.
Exactly. And regulators and civil rights groups are already scrutinizing this stuff. So by launching this feature, Amazon is walking right into one of the biggest ethical debates we're having about AI today. It's a classic case of the technology moving faster than our social consensus.
And it forces you, the user, to decide how much convenience you're willing to trade for what we used to think of as, just normal anonymity in public.
It's a tough question.
Okay, let's try to bring this all together. We covered the insane financial and physical scale of the AI arms race. We're talking SoftBank's $40 billion checks and xAI's new buildings. We looked at the strategic shift in how we'll talk to AI moving away from screens to this ambient, hands-free audio world.
Right.
And then we dug into the really complex layers of competition, from DeepSeek's clever efficiency to the blurred lines between NVIDIA and Grok, all of that against the sharp ethical edge of having surveillance tech like Ring on our homes.
And if you connect all those dots back to that tension we saw in the hardware market, the huge money, that dynamic between NVIDIA and Grok leaves us with a really provocative final question for you to think about.
Okay.
As AI development gets more and more centralized, as it becomes dependent on just a few key hardware providers, how much truly disruptive innovation can we really expect from new startups? Will every new player be forced into the orbit of a giant? Or can the DeepSeeks of the world actually break free and build a new platform on their own?
That is a fascinating thought.
That's the dynamic you should be watching as all this unfolds.
Forcing us to ask if this concentration of power might end up stifling the very innovation that got us all so excited in the first place. Well, thank you for sharing your sources and letting us dive into these huge changes. We encourage you to keep learning and keep questioning. We'll catch you on the next dive.